In terms of the agenda for tonight, we have a couple of quick announcements, and then uh, some updates on some prior business. New business is actually being tabled, and what we're going to focus on tonight is really talking about the zoning regulation rewrite, because the first of the public hearings for that is actually coming up this Wednesday. So that's actually the first announcement. There's going to be two public hearings this Wednesday, the 21st at 6 o'clock. It'll be in person at City Hall and also via Zoom. And then a second hearing on the 28th, also at City Hall, possibly in a different room though, and also via Zoom. We've asked for, and I have a slide on this too, but we've asked for some clarification on whether or not people will be able to speak at both sessions. Sometimes if you've talked at the first one, they will allow you to speak at the second one based on new information you either heard at the first one or subsequent information that was updated from the city. So we're waiting for a clarification from Steve Kleppen on that. And then just another announcement for those of you who were participating or still would like to participate in providing feedback on the Seaview Avenue improvements project. The public comments for that project end on July 1st. So you can still submit those into the city. The easiest way to be able to do that is to go through the city website. You go into government and then click on the department that's called Transportation, Mobility, and Parking. And when you click there, you'll see a page that's dedicated to Seaview Avenue project and a feedback link. And then in line with that, we do have another announcement actually from Mrs. Deepa Segley there regarding an upcoming initiative to talk about the noise issues regarding Veterans Memorial Park. I think this is probably at other places in the city, but this is where it's getting kind of chronic and worse as well. So I'm going to stop here just quick and let Roberta make an announcement on what's happening there and how people can get involved with that. And Roberta, yep, you can unmute yourself.
Okay,
you thanks. Share screen.
Thanks, Diane. Actually, I have nothing to share on the screen at this point. But what I just wanted to say is that my husband and I live across the street from the parking lot on Seaview Avenue. And there's just been an awful lot of increase. We've been here for 20 years. And like this past year or so, there seems to be progressive noise happening. And I don't know how many people live close to Vets Park. I don't know how many people are also finding the noise pollution really difficult. But Shumley and I are going to start an initiative. We've got a flyer made up. We're going to make some posts on social media. And we just want to encourage anybody who's also experiencing this noise pollution to speak out. And we'll give you links to emails and all that other good stuff. I kind of don't want to pollute what's going on with zoning right now with this, but they are sort of linked because with the increased density is going to come increased noise. And I personally am not really happy with a lot of amplified noise coming from the park. Yeah, we get it. The Oyster Festival, fine, that's fine. Pride happened a couple of weekends ago. Okay, great. My bad. Didn't know it got moved from Matthews Park. But, you know, there's also ad hoc parties going on there with like very loud amplification, and the police don't really feel like they need to do anything about that. So I'm just encouraging anyone who has the same sort of feeling about this to reach out to public officials so maybe we can nip some things in the bud, because it's bound to get better before it gets worse. So that's it. Thanks, Diane. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes to talk about it.
Thanks, Roberta, too. I think maybe you meant bound to get worse before it gets better, just with the other initiatives. So, and then when you do have that all finalized, we can also post that in one of the weekly email newsletters, so people will know how they can get involved and you know, what maybe the next steps are in that for you. Okay, and then another announcement. I just want to talk about this briefly because we haven't put out an update on this in a while. We were trying to do them just via newsletters, but unfortunately, we have a very discouraging and nearly tragic, I would say, outcome with the appeal that was filed by the abutting neighbors for the Cemetery Mill Pond development. What has happened, and I can share a little bit of it with you, and maybe have some next steps, but apparently the law firm that we hired, and that was actually funded through donations through all of you good folks as well as a retainer. Their lawyer and the firm actually missed the boat in terms of some statutory requirements for what was filed and when it got filed and who was noticed. And we're in the unfortunate position now that by having missed those deadlines and been completely negligent and incompetent, I'm using those words because they're the same words that will be used in a grievance that's going to be filed with the Connecticut State Bar Association. But because of that negligence, it appears that there's no recourse now for those neighbors, unfortunately, to be able to continue to pursue the appeal. There were items that are involved with the legal process that would have had to have happened and didn't happen in time. And in fact, we just only now found out about it about a week and a half ago. So it's very unfortunate. ENNA is working with the appellants, the abutting neighbors. Of course, we were the go-between in terms of the funding that supported the retainer that the law firm did accept in exchange for being able to do this appeal for us. So we're also going to be working through the legalities of A, making sure we get back that money, and B, what is the mechanism that we're required to use now to make sure that everyone who donated with the intention of it going to the legal fund, which was the GoFundMe fund that brought in the 8,000, that we'll be able to reach out to everyone who did that, and anyone, of course, who wants a refund of their money, that will be made immediately. And if someone wants to continue with the donation, they can just let us know that we can hold on to the money and use that for future ENNA purposes. So a very unfortunate news there. Wish I had better news, but it does seem that, at this point that there's no resident recourse in terms of what's going to happen at that parcel. And then just another quick update, because we continue to get questions on this, but I think most of you know now that the empty parcel, the old Hojo parcel at exit 16, was actually purchased by the state of Connecticut. And the rationale there they gave was the purpose of staging for the long-term work for the walk bridge. But it's very rare that the state would actually purchase staging for something, that's not directly impacted by the project, like right next to the project. So we're hoping to get some more information on what they think they're going to do with that parcel long term. We have it on pretty good authority that the engineers at the DOT are continuing to pursue the redesign of the exit 16 interchange into the diverging diamond. If you're not familiar with that, you can backtrack through some of our emails or just reach out to us via email and we'll provide you with information on that new design. And we are continuing to get reports of what appears to us to be arbitrary tree clear cutting. And so we want to get some explanation from them as well on that. In terms of new business, we're tabling again to July now to talk about volunteers that can help to form ad hoc committees. And only because we have our hands tied right now with zoning. And I do want to mention it's kind of a catch-22 for me right now. We have had several people who have written into us during our appeals for volunteers and board members, but it's like a bit of a catch-22 for me because we really need help right now. But because I'm so bogged down in the minutia of trying to deal with the zoning stuff, I don't really have time to spend with people to talk about what those opportunities are and then to go through the process of bringing them on board and training them. So it's unfortunate, but I hope that sometime during the summer we can get that stuff going. Okay, and then if you do have an interest after tonight's meeting, in wanting to participate in a meeting on Monday, the 26th, I can make myself available for that and set it at a reasonable time. And if it seems like there's a few people that are interested, I will certainly do that. And if not, I'm happy to work with anyone offline via email or Zoom to continue the with help on anything having to do with the zoning regulations. Okay. And now, speaking of the regulations, it occurred to me that I'm not sure if we actually posted this anywhere. I think that I did, but I wasn't sure, so I put it up here. Some of you will recall at our May meeting that we actually had the Director of Planning and Zoning as our guest, Steve Kleppen. But you might not be aware that we did go ahead and post that video in its entirety on our YouTube site. So if you haven't reviewed that and you'd like to do that, you can go to the YouTube channel and simply type in East Norwalk Neighborhood Association. It'll bring up our channel and our full library of videos that you can peruse there. And I'm pretty sure they're posted in date order. So this one would be near the beginning. So if you missed that or you just want to re-review it, please feel free to do that. Okay, so what I really wanted to focus on tonight was to be able to do another quick walkthrough of how it is that you can educate yourself regarding these zoning regulations that are up for the public hearing. The intent was part of the intent was for ENNA to be able to have a position statement at this point, pointing out a lot of concerns that as the association we want to raise. But that's not going to be finalized until just in time for this Wednesday's public hearing. But we are encouraging people. Of course, we need tons of people to write into the city to give them your opinion of what's happening either on your street itself or throughout the East Norwalk area, and also your sentiment on the changes that are happening citywide. So for tonight, what I wanted to do is take an opportunity, kind of a little training class on how to maneuver around the city website so that you can get all the information you need about your street, about East Avenue, East Norwalk, and about the city as a whole. And I just want to bring up the actual city screen so that you can follow along. Okay, so if you go on to the city website, let's just go back to the beginning here and grab a pen and pencil if you need to take some notes on how to navigate everything. So all I'm doing now is I'm in the city website and I'm on the home page. And if you just scroll down a little bit, you're going to come to some large size icons, which are some of the most popular ones that people actually look to access within the city. And so what we did was we asked them to put in one here just for zoning regulations updates. So the easiest way to get to the screen is actually just from the home screen, and you can click on this. And the other way that you can always go in is just click on the home page, go to city government. If you can see my cursor, you would go to city government, then planning and zoning, and then click on the zoning and regulations update link, and it will bring you to this page. The page that you're looking at here that I'm scrolling through, and I'll go back to the top in a minute, is everything that you would need to be able to reference and use as a tool or read in terms of understanding the zoning regulations. So there really isn't another page that you'll have to go to once you start taking a look here at what's available to you. One of the things that I do want to point out is that they have a fillable form that you can click on right here so that you can provide feedback, and they'll be collating all of that and providing it to the commission as well. So that may be an easier way for a lot of folks instead of doing an email in, so you can click right there to provide feedback. They're also beginning to start to publish some of the feedback and their responses to it as well. And we'll get to that in just a moment. As you scroll down, the city has made available to residents a series of information sheets that are kind of just like, primers on what zoning is all about. It talks about bulk and height standards and how they impact what people can do with their property. An overview of the zoning map with kind of an executive summary of some of the areas that are highlighted throughout the city, and a bit about what their schedule and outreach was. And if you scroll down a little bit more, there are some specific sheets that talk about how zoning is going to interact with other statutory requirements and goals of the city, like flood plans, coastal area management reviews, sustainability, which is a word I know you've been hearing a lot about lately, and then requirements for grading, draining, and vegetation. So these are all kind of fun fact sheets, and you can open each one and take a look at those. In addition to those, if you take a look at this list to the left that has all of those, they just recently on Friday posted a new link called Responses to Public Comment. And let's see if it works tonight, actually. It was a work in progress before the weekend, and they were hoping to have this all populated before the public hearing. And what they're going to provide is a table of responses to all the comments that have come in so far. So you can see what people are asking, what they're suggesting, what their concerns are, and then the actual staff response back to them. And it will be in a table. And then they're also going to be posting all of the letters that have been submitted to date. So that includes emails and letters that came in for communication that didn't come in through that little fill me in link that was on the website there. Let me just click this, but I don't think this is going to come up unless they've updated it. Oh. All right, so that's still not working, but hopefully it will be working by tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Okay, again, this is another click field on the same as above where you can provide your feedback. And then within the graphic, you can click on the graphic as well to just get to the form and then fill that out. Down here, though, they have started populating some of the feedback received to date with responses. I think last time I looked at this, there was 35 pages worth of it. But it's a pretty interesting read because it's the comments and questions and concerns from the public. Hey, so Diane, in the left column, it has all the comments. And in the right column, it has the staff response to each one of those.
Diane, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
So there's a question in the comments. Is it too late to submit a written response to this?
No, it's not too late. Okay. So you can continue to click on that form and submit information. And then one of the things that we're going to find out is, and actually, let me click on it and just make sure that that is still active because it's supposed to be. We're also going to try to find out whether or not the commission chair people have made a decision. Yes, this is still active. So it basically says like kind of who you are, like, are you a property owner? Are you a business owner? Just someone with an interest in development, what your comment pertains to. So if you have multiple topics, then I think that you do have to click on each one and then enter your comment for that particular category. And then and enter the comment below and submit it. And so you can do as many of those as you choose. We have asked, it's not unusual for a public hearing to be continued for public comment, that's written comment after the fact. So we are awaiting 2 answers from Steve Kleppen right now. Are they going to keep the public hearing open through the summer as the commissioners continue to work with staff and evaluate the feedback that they heard? And whether or not, they would actually take those comments into account when it comes to the fall. The second part of that was, I forget what the second part of it was. I have it on an upcoming slide though. I do understand from Steve that even though these are legal public hearings versus public forums that we were hoping to have, where people could just kind of ask questions, learn more, have a dialogue with the commissioners, these are actual legal public hearings. And but I understand from Steve Kleppen that there will be at least one more public hearing in the fall prior to the commission taking any action on this proposed plan to either adopt it or reject it. There is no action being taken following either one of the next, these two public hearings that are coming up.
Hey, Diane, somebody else
Yep.
has asked the question. Does this include the Seaview Avenue project?
It doesn't include the project, although it makes reference to it in here, because it's part of a project, like an improvement project in terms of the zone. So I think it is mentioned a few times in different ones of these regulations that are here. But Seaview Avenue is part of the new zoning, so you'll see it on the map being referenced as to what the zone is. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not.
I think so. Karen,
Okay.
if it doesn't, ping again, but I think so. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. And then sometimes I know people get confused between Seaview Avenue and Seaside Place. So we can take a look at Seaside too if you want, because it's one of the ones that was originally upzoned and then downzoned again. Okay, this is the section where kind of the rubber meets the road, guys. This is the actual regulations as they're being proposed. A lot of it is kind of, not so much legalese, but it's very complicated in terms of, how zones get designated, what you're allowed to do, things like building materials, heights, setbacks, etc. But within each one of these articles, there's a lot of interesting information about how these new zones are actually going to be developed and then enforced as well. I want to point out a couple of them to you, but I encourage you to click on all of them and at least take a look for anything that might be of interest to you. So the first one would be Article 3. It's a really easy read, but it kind of gives you a good overview in terms of what the proposed zoning districts are. And it is written in easy to read language. So they did a pretty good job of doing that. Okay, and then the big one is, I'm not going to go through all of these, but if you go into Article 4, Article 4 are the actual building lot and building site standards. And this is the one that's important when you're looking to see exactly what's going on in your neighborhood, on your street, for example, and to be able to understand each of the zones. Let me go up here. Okay. So what this article does is it walks you through each one of the new zones. There's a consolidation, I think, of 31 or 35 zones into 14 zones. And this article here goes through all 14 of the new zones. It starts off by taking a look at the lot size itself and what can be done. Each one of, why can't I just get back on this screen here? Hang on. Okay, each one of these sets of information for each one of the zones is formatted exactly the same way. So as you go to each new zone, for example, this is zone 3, CD3L, okay, up here. It'll show you representation of what a building lot and building site would look like. And these letters and numbers that you see within there correspond to each one of the designations here for setbacks. And then the next set is talks about frontage, what you can and can't have in your front yard. Whether or not there is civic space and if it's permitted or not and what type. Let me just scroll right here to the bottom first now. At the bottom of almost every page that you would be using to understand these zones, especially before the public hearing, this is the legend down here at the bottom of the screen. And so everything is designated as either as permitted, meaning they can just do something as of right, not permitted, which means it can't be done at all, not applicable within that zone, something that's required, or something that's not regulated. The legend here will change a little bit as you get into each zone, because for the uses, you'll see permitted, not permitted, permitted with limitations, permitted by special permit, or not regulated. And I'll point that out when we get down a little bit. The next section in each one of the zones in this article will talk about the building standards, including building heights for minimum and maximum heights, things like the composition of the building, the ceiling heights, etc. And then we'll get into signage, lighting, anything that has to do with a non-building component. Move this up here. What can you have as a non-building component in the front yard, the side yards, and the rear yards, for example? It talks a little bit about landscaping. Whoops. Sorry, just went past all that again. My cursor does not want to cooperate with me tonight. And I'm frozen.
I don't know if you're frozen, as if it's just going very slowly.
And I don't know why, because I had this open today and was kind of flying through it. Let me see if I can close. Maybe because I have the map open as well, the big one. Let me get rid of that, and that may actually be contributing to this nuisance here.
Okay.
See if this helps any bit. Okay, I think I did jump down a bit, but for example, then you're going to go through each of the 14 new zones is in here, including all those C zones, which have to do mostly with residential. Let me just go a little bit. Then you're going to come into zones that have to do with industrial uses and marine commercial uses. And then I think civic uses. So it's going to have all of the residential zones, then the industrial zones, and then marine commercial, all through these pages. And there's 250 pages in this one. What you might want to do is start with taking a look at the interactive map and simply locating the zone that your street is on. And then first understanding that, and then zoom into the East Norwalk map and take a look at all the other zones that are in there. And I believe East Norwalk has, within East Norwalk proper, meaning 06855, we have designations for 8 of the 14 new zones. So if this thing doesn't give me a headache here, let me open that. Oh, someone asked a question on whether or not you could still get to the original map, I think. In order
there
to
were comparisons of the original and then the,
so if you want to see
whatever.
The map that was presented to the zoning commission on April 12th, that was the one that was prior to the June 6th change. So there is a link there that you can click on, and you can actually see what these were before the June 6th changes went into it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Again, my recommendation is for you to click on all of those articles just to see what they're about. And if there are things that seem important to you or that you think they're important to our community here in East Norwalk, you'll want to dig a little bit deeper into those. But now we'll go into the map itself so I can show you again how to use this, because at last month's meeting or before that, we just kind of flew through this. Okay, when you first click on the interactive map, it's going to bring up a whole map. If it's the first time, it may look like the entire universe to you as well. All you have to do is click on I've read the above instructions there, which don't really mean anything. So you click on that and click OK. And then you can zoom in or zoom out as you need to bring up Norwalk within this map. But one of the things that people do first is to go up to this find bar and put in your address. Does anybody want to volunteer an address so we can look at an actual parcel for you?
Sure. You know
Okay,
mine.
who's got
17 Schofield Place. Go for it.
Okay, and then one of the things that Steve always reminds you of too is that these maps are kind of universal. So if you were just to put in 17 Schofield, you're also going to get Darien, Stamford. If there was one in Milwaukee, you'd get Milwaukee as well. So you'll want to put in Schofield Place and then Norwalk, Connecticut to get that hit, or just see if it comes up in the drop down and you can click on that.
Great point. Thank you. I have that problem with Uber Eats. I've had food go to Westport.
Exactly. Because there's also like Norwalk, Ohio and Norwalk, California. So even those get kind of confusing. But okay, so what it's done now is it's pinpointed 17 Schofield Place. So we actually have the parcel here. And when we click on this parcel now, it's going to bring up at least 2 boxes that will indicate to you what the proposed zone is. And the other one would be the existing zone. Sometimes the existing zone comes up first, and then you click on it to get the proposed zone. So I'm just looking here for what the designation is, proposed zone, and clicking on the toggle arrow to go back to the existing zone. Okay. If I start to lose anybody, please go into chat so Sarah can stop me. So we're looking at 17 Schofield Place. And the existing zone is designated as B. It's in the B residence zone. And if you wanted to see what the existing use regulations are for those, that is not in a very pretty format like the consultants have done our new zones. You would click on this and you would actually have to read through all of the zoning regulations to look up the B residence to see what's allowed. I highly recommend people do that if you don't understand what your current zoning allows, and then come back in here and click on the proposed. I don't know if you guys want me to do this just so you can see it.
I was just going to say, does anybody feel like they want to know how to do this?
This meeting is being recorded.
Oops.
Okay, so if you did click on that, you'll find our zoning regulations written in the format as they exist today. And so there's 33 pages of that in terms of mostly, I think, these residential zones. In this case, you can just scroll through.
I'm muting a couple of people who are causing an echo.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. And then you can click through to each one of the subchapters in the zoning regulations and then look for the zone that you're currently in. So let's scroll down and see if we can find the B residential zone. I'm not sure if we can actually do a search on it, but let's try that too. It may. There we go. That does work. Now what I'm in here is the B residential zone. And I can take a look here. And the first thing I think was what popped out to most people, all the folks that live in the B residential zones in East Norwalk, you'll see that the current designation is that the zone only allows for single family detached dwellings in terms of residential use. And then there are some other uses, like neighborhood clubhouses. And the next section in the existing zones always then goes into what's allowed by special permit, meaning that they need to meet special criteria that gets evaluated, but special permits also require a public hearing as well. So you can see in Zone B that things like museums, places of worship, colleges and universities, cemeteries, halfway houses, firehouses, all of those uses are allowed by special permit in the B zone. And you can continue to read the actual regulations for the zone as it exists. Then if you go back to the map, you can click on what the new zone designation is. And for this portion of the B zone is now designated as CD3S. It originally, until a week or so ago, was designated as CD3, which is 2 family. So let me click on this now for CD3S. And you'll see the new format for how the zoning regulation is written, bringing you back to those sheets that are color-coded and have all the renditions of what's allowed. So now if we take a look at CD3S and we come down, Sarah, who lives there, would be able to read everything about what's allowed on the parcel itself, including the building types as well. And then she would be able to come down to the actual use chart. Oops. Which I think is here, or maybe not. Okay, it seems like the use chart may not be on every. Once you click in on this, I guess not all the uses are listed here. You still have to go out to Article 4 to read all of them. But in this particular zone, I'm trying to find the point where it just says single family.
It says it right there at the top of each page. There's a block that says.
Oh, right, with the 3S, it's up here. Exactly. Thank you.
Sure.
So the overall designation then for CD3S is that they're calling it a suburban single family community district. So that's an example of where one of the original B zones that was changing entirely to 2 family, the city has now put in a change now to block out that particular area and keep it as single family. Now, all of this area here that's shaded in yellow would be in that same CD3S zone. And so that's going to be, oh, here's a proposed use table. I'm sorry, let me click on that. If you click on the second one there, you'll see all the uses come up. It'll talk about the general uses, what's permitted as of right, etc. And then here's the grid that I was telling you about that you should look for in every zone, starting with your own street, but also in East Norwalk. What they've done here is something that we have longed to have and we've never had before. So this is a vast improvement. They've taken each one of the 14 zones and listed them across the top of these use sheets. And then down the left-hand side, they have listed every possible use that can be in a zone. And then across the grid, they're telling you how that's categorized for that particular zone. And here's where you'll see the other legend. A P is permitted by right, meaning no special permit. And no notification to abutting neighbors or anything. A PL is permitted by right, but it has some limitations. And you can read about those. They're highlighted within each one of the zones. SPU stands for special permit. So it's permitted by special permit only. Again, it has to meet 13 different criteria regarding quality of life for that use in a neighborhood. And it also would require a public hearing. Not permitted means period. It's not permitted at all. So you can't even apply via special permit. The only way something like that could be permitted is if a developer or a property owner made an application to the city to actually change the zone itself. And then finally, not regulated means that there's no regulation having to do with that type of use. And you'll see some of those have to do with parks and things. Okay, so we'll stay within this zone for a minute. Within zone 3S, what you would do then is you'd go down the left-hand side and take a look at each one of the possible uses, and then go across the grid and see how the city has designated that. If you're happy that something is now allowable in the zone that you didn't think could be done before, you might want to let them know that. And conversely, if there's something that's now permitted in the zone you're looking at that you're not particularly happy with, then you'll want to let them know that as well. And also let them know why you think that it shouldn't be allowed in the zone. And then the third possibility is if you see something that's not allowed in the zone and you feel strongly that it should be allowed in the zone, then you should also make that comment as well. I'm going to point out bed and breakfast here for 1 second, because when I was perusing through some of those public comments that have been posted so far, I saw at least 2 where people raised a concern over bed and breakfasts being allowed in the primarily residential neighborhoods. So I just found that of interest, and I think anyone who has that concern, maybe read a little bit more on the definition of a bed and breakfast, which you can find in article, I forget what article it's in all the ones in the front page there, but one of the articles actually lists all the definitions of these uses. And you can take a look at how it's defined and if there's maximum occupancy, etc. And so as you go through, you'll want to scroll through each one of the uses within your zone and then see if anything jumps out at you. Now, for me, it's a little hard for me to follow these things, although I ended up printing out a copy, but it's a little bit hard to follow as you're scrolling down the screen unless you reduce the size of it. So Steve Kleppen is going to see if the consultants can go back and color code this top group of the zones so that they're color coded to match what you're seeing on that interactive map, and then carry that color code all the way down the column. And that should make it a little bit more user-friendly for people to follow each one of the uses and the zones. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see they're also grouped into different types of uses like residential, office, recreational, and entertainment uses. What types of parking is allowed, dining, retail, personal services, etc. And you can scroll all the way to the bottom until you hit, the next zone. And then there are some, for example, when ENNA presents our final kind of position statement, there's going to be a bunch of uses that are allowed in East Norwalk and some that are allowed in a whole bunch of places all over the city that we think should be questionable. One that has come up in East Norwalk before is adult use establishments. So it's interesting that that's allowed in a couple of different zones. It may be something that people feel like, maybe there's not a place at all in the city for it, but that's, I think, personal opinion. Then it gets into civic uses like playgrounds and parks, and then transportation uses as well. One of the things that I want to caution you on, for example, if you're looking at East Norwalk and you see these first 4 or 5 residential type zones up here that are listed, and you scroll down in yours and you see, oh, thank goodness, a municipal public parking is not permitted, or a bus storage terminal is not permitted. One of the things that you'll want to do is still scroll over and see where it is permitted, and take a look at the map and see if that zone exists in East Norwalk. And I'm pointing this one out in particular because SDLI zone up here is a district that's light industrial, and then followed by heavy industrial. Both of those zones happen to exist in East Norwalk still under the new regulations. And so a bus terminal, a storage terminal could be coming to a parcel near you. So again, it's not only important to take a look at the column that's representing just your residential neighborhood, it's important to look at where else things are permitted, and then look on the map, or already write down from the map on a cheat sheet all the zones that are in East Norwalk, so that you can consider these things as you're going through.
Hey, Diane,
So go. Yep, I'll take questions now on this. Thanks, Sarah.
I'm just going to read off Mimi's question, but maybe she'll say it better. But she's written in chat, exactly how many B zone single family zoned streets are projected to be upzoned to CD3 1 to 2 family? Is East Norwalk projected to get the highest percentage increase of upzone from B to CD3 of all of Norwalk?
Okay, I don't know about.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Okay, I don't know about the highest percentage or not, because I'm having to spend a lot of time just chunking into our own stuff. So I haven't looked at that, but I can answer that in 2 ways. In right now, as best I can tell, and Brian Baker, who is in planning at the city, is supposed to get to me tomorrow on Tuesday, an exact count of the number of parcels that are single family in East Norwalk now that will be changing to 2 family or more. I did a count of the streets that I'm certain of, which basically align with Mr. Kleppen's goal of this, which is to concentrate it around the train station. And of all of those streets, I'm counting up at least 160 parcels right now. But because there are little pockets in other parts that where the entire street isn't a zone B already, it's a little bit laborious to go through. And so that's why we're asking Brian Baker to do the actual parcel count for us. So right now, I can tell you that I've identified 160. I don't know how many more there are of those. I can't speak to the percentage, Mimi, but it's a good question for you to shoot into staff. They're actually trying to answer those questions almost as quickly as they come in. So you may be able to get, they're closed today, obviously. And actually happy, I don't know if the sentiment is happy Juneteenth, but to anyone who's observing today, one, apologies for having this meeting in light of that observation and everything being closed. But City Hall is closed today. But tomorrow, I would suspect if you send that question, you can get an answer right away as to relative to other areas of the city. I think probably it's not the largest percentage because they're looking to have that amount of density around transit hubs, and in particular East Norwalk, South Norwalk, and up at Grumman, where the station is up there as well. And so those parcels are all going to be wherever they're single family. There's going to be a lot converted over to 2 family. Having said that, there were a lot of other areas. I think there was 11 in total in either entire neighborhoods or pockets of neighborhoods that were slated to go from B1 family to C two-family in one of those C zones, where Steve Kleppen then, based on public outcry, went back and revisited those and has then rolled those back to retain their single-family zone. He did not do that for East Norwalk. And the rationale so far that we've been told is because the streets in East Norwalk, mine is one of them, just for full disclosure. Streets like Olmsted, Raymond, Myrtle, Fitch, Fort Point, St. John, I think a portion of Edley, Laurel, Mulberry, I think still one portion of Strawberry Hill, and there's a few more in there, are the ones that are still being designated for moving to two-family because of the proximity to the train station. Originally, the parcel we were just looking at, actually at Schofield, that actually then crosses over Strawberry Hill and comes into Woodland Court over there. And that originally was all put in for single-family zoning. And then a change was made for that little block to be cut out and made into to remain single-family instead of two-family. I'm going to go back to the map for a second because I want to show you, I know it's 8 o'clock, but I want to show you this quickly. Some of the parcels throughout the city that were designated to move to two-family are also just north of us to our friends over here in the City Hall Neighborhood Association area. And what's happened is, I'm going to show you like a little cutout here of what happened in this zone, if I can get this thing to open up. So if you come over just north of us, you'll see that along East Avenue, these parcels are being designated now as going from the B zone into CD3. These are the parcels in tan here that you see. And then just a little bit beyond that, you see CD3S, which is similar to Schofield, where those parcels are kind of the break point off of East Avenue that stay with the one family zone designation. But if you come up a little bit over to Sunset Hill, and you'll see City Hall here as well. Okay, there in the green, which is denoted as civic area. What you're going to see is right around Sunset Hill at Beacon and Tyron and looks like, you know, a portion of Willow Street. All of those are designated now to stay as one family zoning. But now you come in right to the portion next to it that also abuts East Avenue. And all of this that was designated to stay as, or to move to two-family zoning, was suddenly changed to remain one-family zoning. And this is where we have kind of a gripe to say that there's a lot of inequity in terms of who got to keep one-family zoning and who didn't. And it's pretty obvious when you see a gap like this between, I think you could see my cursor, between, you know, this doesn't get to stay, and this doesn't get to stay as one family all the way down here into East Norwalk along East Avenue. But this whole chunk now gets to remain that way.
Diane, I have a question that may make, it seems to me as if when I look at this, we're talking about large areas like a block of color or something that says this or this is or isn't. What, and I typed it in the chat, but what I think is strange is, doesn't the lot size dictate it a little bit? So for instance, if you have a tenth,
Yes.
and if you have 1/10 of an acre lot or you have a half-acre lot, there's a very big difference between making one of those two-family or not. Are there any rules about, okay, this lot is too small to make two-family?
But I mean, if the lot itself can't support it, because even within zones, you have different size lots, but if the lot itself wasn't able to support it, because I think that you still need a minimum width on a lot to be able to do it, then the parcel itself probably wouldn't be allowed to have the two family there anyway, just based on the size of the parcel. But what you see here, what happens is with like in many cities, is you see the smallest parcels concentrated in the areas of the city that were either industrial or have transit. And then as you go out further, you have, the 1 acre, 2 acre, and the designation for the large lot properties. But I think within each one, I think that there's still criteria to some extent that's based on the size of the parcel itself.
But it does feel like some inequity here when you're looking at an area where the lots are probably larger and suddenly they're staying single family, whereas an area where the lots are generally smaller and they're not.
Right, exactly. And especially if you compare it to ones that are just like literally right next to them.
Yeah, it feels very unfair to those of us who are not swimming in money. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for people who are following social media and even, stuff that's been written in the general, traditional press, there are a lot of people who are designating it as using the term winners and losers. And you also will see, because no one has mentioned it here, I don't think in chat, that there are at least 2 of the designated areas that were changed kind of in the midst of everyone else that's not getting to change. This is a curious fact. I hope it's coincidental, but it happens to be where 2 common council people live. And one is where, or at least one common council person lives, and another area that got changed back to retaining single family is where a planning and zoning commissioner actually lives. So yeah, we get the sentiment of not only winners and losers, but actually the inequity of, how are these decisions actually being made? So, that's a pretty big concern.
It feels very concerning to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a concern. And I think people need to raise the concern. I want to say something else right now too. I noticed that in some areas where there seems to have been more of an open mind to either take out uses or not make things as objectionable in terms of parcel size and 1 or 2 family. As I was reading through comments, I'm seeing that there's a lot of comments that have come through from neighborhood groups and streets where they really seem to have lobbied like to push this thing back. I didn't really see stuff coming in from East Norwalk. And so I'm not sure if it's a sense of people, we're waiting to do this other walkthrough based on this new draft of the map, or waiting to then put everything together and submit for the public hearing or speak at the public hearing. But you can submit as many comments and questions and concerns and suggestions as you want. And back in April and the beginning of May, we encouraged people to start doing that right away. So I'm not sure if it's just that they're not posted, but I can say that what I do see so far, what's been published, there has not been a lot of actual people writing in from East Norwalk. And that needs to happen in addition to
we won't be the winners.
ENNA speaking out to and what we don't want to do is we don't want to punish other areas. The goal is not to say, well, if you're going to mess us up, then you've got to do these other areas too. The goal is not to mess any of us up. And to reiterate the rationale that you guys see in the newsletter, ENNA, the organization, depends that East Norwalk proper has already been upzoned 3 times. So we're not just saying, okay, yeah, we happen to be blessed and cursed with a train station here, and we don't think that should be the only rationale for why we're taking the brunt of this upzoning. But the fact of the matter is because of that train station, we've been upzoned 3 times. The city is contesting that to say that that's not what happened. But here's the reality of it. For those of you who have been following this stuff for a while, you will recall that prior to the TOD study that started this whole East Avenue debacle that we have now, that resulted in Cemetery Mill Pond development. Just prior to that, the city undertook what for all intent and purposes was spot zoning to upzone the area literally at the train station. What was then, it was dubbed as 230 East Avenue when they were going through the zoning change, but ultimately became the Brim and Crown parcel there. That's the first example of upzoning because it included a brand new structure and under a special permit that had greater density than anything that would have been allowed over there. And that is 100 and I forget what the final number is for Brim and Crown, but I believe it's 189 for units. That was the first upzoning that was done to us under great protest from this community. And still it went through. It went through based on the fact that they thought TOD would be approved at some point, and they thought that it met the fundamental tenets of TOD. And so they zoned that particular parcel to be kind of its own TOD zone. Number one. The next thing that happened in 2019, I think it was, don't quote me on that, please, was in the actual TOD study to investigate transit-oriented development within this corridor, with the goal of the support of ENNA to be able to look to see how we could do beautification, how we could improve sidewalks, business facades, encourage absentee loaner property owners to take care of their properties and rent to the type of services and retail that we wanted in the community, etc. What ended up happening was TOD became a much bigger study. And I'm not going to bring up the map now, but you can find it yourself on the city website. The TOD zone allows for some amount of upzoning within a 2-mile radius of the train station, and also made recommendations for things like the Seaview Avenue Promenade, for redesignating the Cove area, for increased development, etc. That was the second thing that happened. The third thing that happened was they said they were going to take TOD and focus only on the area that was a 1/4 mile of the train station and actually look to upzone just the East Avenue corridor, plus into a few little side streets like Prowett, St. John, Rowan, Fort Point, Van Zant, etc. And upzone that so that there could be 3.5-story buildings with double the density all along that corridor. So those are the 3 upzones that we refer to that the city doesn't recognize as being upzoning, except for EVTZ. When they referenced that, Brian Baker, the planner, wrote back to me that EVTZ along the East Avenue parcel, in reality, only includes 84 parcels. But what he doesn't tell the public is those 84 parcels are designated for the increased height and the density. So it's not like 84 single family homes going to 2-family homes, where you would have then another 84 housing units, so to speak. It's 84 parcels that are going to maximum density. And many of you will recall that when we pressed him for a build out analysis, the answer to that was it would be upwards of 1,100 units of housing.
84 and 1,100 is very different.
It's pretty different, and units in this case do mean apartments.
So I think
the EVTZ zone.
you may, which is You may have just answered the question that Mimi had in the chat, but I'm going to read it out anyway. Is Steve Kleppen still planning on consolidating East Avenue corridor EVTZ radius as an urban core to consolidate us with Wall Street's urban core designation? He told the press that this was his intention.
He has already designated this an urban core. Whether or not that changes anything in terms of the scope of EVTZ, I don't know, and I can say right now I don't think so. It's just really more of a designation of an urban core because of the nature of the road being next to the highway, having mixed use in the whole corridor, and of course the not only the businesses, but the correlation to South Norwalk as an urban core because we have the East Norwalk train station. Again, I don't want to go over things that you guys know over and over again that ENNA can test, but you cannot compare the East Norwalk train station to the South Norwalk train station. You just can't. And our other argument, again, we don't want to say, well, if you're hoisting all of this on top of us, then why aren't you hoisting it on top of Rowayton? But that fact remains that if what they're saying is they're focusing on neighborhoods that have train stations, then why aren't they focusing on Rowayton as well?
Absolutely.
And our train station is more relatable to Rowayton than to South Norwalk, in every regard. It just may be that there are parcels that, the road structure may be a little bit more adaptable here, of course, than it is in Rowayton, but it doesn't mean that can't be rezoned. And in the same way, we have developers that come in and will assemble large parcels here in order to do maximum density. They can certainly buy up residential property around the train station in Rowayton and do the same thing, but they cannot do it in the absence of Steve Kleppen rezoning the area. And that's another inequity. And at some point, I know you guys have heard me talk about this, but there's probably a case for East Norwalk based on a whole lot of things that are going on here from the city and the state to start looking at an environmental justice complaint against the city and the state, because it's not just that we're the path of least resistance in terms of
It is inequity. Yeah.
It is the inequity. And when you talk about the type of stuff that's coming in, it does impact us, environmentally, everything from, the work at the highway, the potential diverging diamond interchange, the amount of cars and pollution and, noise and everything else that we're being subjected to that other neighborhoods aren't being subjected to. So the first thing I want to say is, please, folks, go in. It really is, for the most part, it's user friendly. They did go through great lengths to kind of write things in English and make it much more easy to understand. There are going to be some pages of stuff you see in there that are a little bit technical with the terminology, but don't let that frighten you away from being able to look at your street, your block, our neighborhood, and the city. Okay, so if you have specific questions, concerns, and suggestions, I highly recommend that you get those into Steve Kleppen, the P&Z director, and he or one of his staff will be able to get back to you, and then also make sure that the concern and suggestion gets recorded. And I think you can also do this to Brian Baker. But in addition to that, if you want to email in public comment or those questions, concerns, or suggestions, and make sure that they get to the P&Z Commission itself, then send those in care of Brian Baker at City Hall. Oops, I think you need to mute them again, Sarah.
Just find the spot to do that. Yep.
Okay. And then, and you can preface the email by saying, please share these comments with the P&Z Commission. In Norwalk, we're not really allowed to communicate with the appointed commissioners directly. It's something that we're, looking to get changed down the road. But for right now, you go through staff. We despite being kind of admonished not to do this because they're not able to vote, ENNA is encouraging people still to send your comments in and copy the mayor and our 2 district seat council representatives. One, because I'll reiterate this again, the P&Z director and staff are all appointees and, hires of the mayor. But a lot of people don't know, or they forget that in Norwalk, our P&Z commission is not elected. Many other towns and cities have an elected commission. Ours is 100% appointed, and it's an appointed a position from the mayor and then approved by the Common Council. We do feel that they should be receiving communication from the public, even if they don't get an opportunity to vote on this plan. They certainly can take into account and speak up on our behalf. They are restricted. Well, I guess it's debatable, but there's a school of thought from the legal department that the mayor and elected officials are prohibited from speaking on zoning items that are an actual land use application from a property owner. And we can kind of see the logic behind that, but I won't go into that tonight. However, the application before the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt this entire rewrite of the zoning regulations is not a private property matter, and therefore we contend that both the mayor and our council reps not only should be able to speak up on our behalf, but they should be doing that for us. And that's why we encourage you to write into Mayor Rilling at this address, John Kites, another District C, he's a District C council rep, but he's on the other side of East Norwalk. And I'm closer to the Westport line and Strawberry Hill line, Westport Avenue line. And then Jen McMurray, who is also on the council, and she lives in East Norwalk proper.
Diane,
In addition,
I just want to make sure, so people have joined and dropped and joined back and different things have gone on. How does somebody get to the instructions about here's who to send an email? Because this is a lot of information for everybody, right?
Mhm.
So if it's, do we need to send emails primarily before Wednesday for the
Mhm.
hearing?
Yep.
I
would try
is
to.
there a list of how to and what emails to send to that could help
Yep.
people?
Okay, so the how-to is just basically you're going to write an email to these specific people, just as I outlined here. We haven't done a template email because we're still finalizing the things that we're looking to raise as concerns, the list of objectionable items that we want to come out, and making the case to retain the single family zoning. If we do, then that would be something that would go out that people could take advantage of before the next hearing. But I would suggest that people, if you're going to email, you email now and, kind of early and often, as we say, and you can continue to email. Once I get an answer from Steve Kleppen on if the public hearing is going to be held open to consider more comments coming in, I'll send that out in an email blast through ENNA to let people know. But I
would advise people to screenshot this so that they, anybody who wants.
No, this is in the emails, like the last 3 email newsletters. Okay. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. Okay, so anyone who's happened to be on here that's not on our email newsletter list, please do that by going to our website, eastnorwalk.org. Or emailing us at info@eastnorwalk.org. But if you go back into the last 2 or 3 email newsletters that went out, we're always posting these emails down near the bottom. And I will post them again on the weekend newsletter as well. But you can do a screen print or just write them down, from here, and then, or go back to the email that you had from not today's email, because it was just a reminder, but if you go back to Saturday's email, it's all in there.
Thanks, Diane. It's a lot of info.
No, sorry about that. I completely misunderstood the.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, and then let me just go to the continue on here, and then I just want to leave a few questions. I see there's a ton of stuff in chat, and I don't know if there's any hands up. So let's get through this.
Yeah.
Okay. For the hearings, the first hearing is on the 21st. The next one is on the 28th. We're asking people to attend, either either or both of them preferably. It is being held in person at City Hall. I believe the one on the 21st is going to be in the big community room on the first floor, because the city and we are expecting a lot of people. And also via Zoom. The Zoom link is on the city website, and I'll try to post that in an email before Wednesday again for you, but definitely go to the city website to get that. And then for the 28th, we believe that's going to be in the Common Council chambers, also in person and also via Zoom. If you would like to appear in person because you want to support the the concerns that we're raising, but you're uncomfortable speaking, generally at meetings, one or more of the ENNA board members or just a volunteer from the neighborhoods will at some point during their public comment ask people to raise their hands if they are there and opposed to some of the changes that are going through. As soon as Steve
There's a
Klepping
question
gets back
about
to me,
just real quick, there's a question about the dates here. It's June 21st. It's Wednesday.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you know this is the third time I have done this in like the past week? And I've been doing it at work too, at my office. This is insane. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. Of course, it's this Wednesday, June 21st and June 28th. So sorry about this. Thank you, Sarah. Even as I'm looking at it, it's still not
That's okay.
jumping out to me. And I'm doing it at my office too. So it's for some reason I feel, maybe it's because I feel like
Listen,
my
I
whole
don't know
summer
how
is
you
going to
manage
be.
all this stuff. So
Yeah, I think I'm already thinking summer is, for me, is done. So I'm sorry, folks. June 21st and June 28th.
I'm going to put in my
It should be right
personal
in the
opinion.
emails, and if it's not, I'll correct that post haste as well.
I'm going to toss in my
Okay,
personal opinion here
we
that
have had several iterations of a petition in progress because this thing has been a moving target. Right from the time that we wanted to try to get hundreds of people to say, please postpone even having these hearings. But they made it very clear to us they had no intention of doing that. So we kind of dropped that. And then we had the next one kind of ready to go, but then they changed the rules of the game in terms of how they were making changes to the map. And so at this point, we just want to make sure that everything is finalized prior to the 6/28 hearing, so that if we do a petition, and I still intend to do that, possibly with a number of other neighborhood associations, and to make sure that we understand what it is that we're asking for. And right now, the list would be that the city hasn't really provided any of what we call a build out analysis and an impact report. So if all of these zones changed, what would it mean in terms of population build out and parcel build out for the community? And what impact would that have? And generally the impacts we ask for have to do with city services, the impact on public schools, police, fire, emergency services, infrastructure, DPW, utilities, water supply, wastewater treatment plant, et cetera, et cetera. We may still continue to ask that they postpone action on this actual item and not take any vote in the fall prior to the election, or to have anything that's actually effective January 1st, which is what their goal is right now. One of the things you saw in the email this weekend was that this plan, the way that it's being developed, doesn't really give residents a whole bunch of time to interact on what we want to see, but it gives developers who are standing by in the wings essentially 5 months to digest all of this, work with city staff on the parcels they're interested in, and then make a decision if they're going to apply under the existing zones before they get approved, or wait for the new zones for when they become effective. Again, another real inequity in how residents are being managed with this. We are going to ask, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, by the way. If it is, reach out to me. We are going to ask that we retain the existing single family zones in East Norwalk. for all the reasons that I stated before about the prior upzoning. And Steve Kleppen had indicated that this is going to be like a working document, and they're going to revisit it in probably 5 years and make adjustments. And so ENNA is suggesting that we wait and let these 2 other zone changes settle in, and let's see how they play out, especially the EVTZ along the East Avenue corridor. Let's see how all that works out first before we start expanding into 2-family, which you can read in the newsletter as well. We don't agree with their assessment of why that's beneficial either. We don't think it's going to increase the opportunity for home ownership. It's probably going to increase the opportunity for absentee land owners to develop 2 families that are strictly rental units, and not have an opportunity for people to own a house that they couldn't before. And then what I didn't get into talking to tonight, but maybe I can get out in an email this weekend. When you go down that use table that I showed you that had all the possible uses for a parcel, and then you read across for which zones it's allowed in, I think you're still going to hit upon many of the ones that we did that are just objectionable. We don't want them in East Norwalk under any condition. Not by special permit, not with limitations, not anything. And so that will also be an ask in this petition when we get it done. I didn't have on here also the lawn signs as well. I understand that there's a couple of other areas in the city that still have a fair amount of lawn signs that haven't been taken. So if you're still looking for a lawn sign, I have a handful, but we have access to a bunch more too that we can get. Okay, so Sarah, are there mostly comments in chat that I can just kind of download later, or are there questions that or hands up?
They're not hands up. I'm just going to see if there's anything that hasn't been. We have a let's fill the community room, East Norwalk. Totally agree with that. We had Michael has written, is there any movement on legal counsel for ENNA? Michael, you might have joined late and missed from the beginning what we're talking about there with what happened with the attorney who I'm just going to go with failed us.
Mhm.
And
yeah, that's in regard to Cemetery Street.
Yes.
But we're still pursuing possible, just to have legal representation and retainer for when all of these other things are coming up as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Nothing to report on that though at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I mean, we could take a moment to say hands up. Anybody? Any other questions?
Yeah, hands up. And while we have a few minutes, if there's somebody who's like really confused, or if you want to look at, have me bring anything up and look at a particular street or parcel. I'm happy to do that as well. And if folks then need to drop off at that point, you can feel free to drop off. I'll just mention though, before we do get into that, and Sarah, you can as well. I know your time is limited. Our next meeting is July 17th. Again, unless I'm getting feedback from people that you are interested in having a meeting with me via Zoom on the 26th, just to delve deeper into this or to get more guidance on preparing what you might say at the hearing, etc. And then for more information, we don't have a lot of this posted on the website because we just don't have the manpower to do it, but you can always log in there and then visit us on Facebook and Instagram and Nextdoor. And then you can always email us as well at info@East Norwalk.
So there's one other question that was also, Donna says you're a rock star. Totally agree with that. There's another note from, it just says PA. I'm not quite sure. So
Peter Nancy.
Thank you, Peter. Go for it.
Thank you.
Sorry, our camera's not working.
Yeah. So the question is, if we're reading the Seaview Avenue right, Seaview Avenue is currently C and D residential. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but it's all houses, right? And it looks like it's changing to CD4W, which is some kind of community storefront
Multi-use.
multi-use thingy.
Mhm.
And so,
We were just curious, does that mean somebody can open a business in their home, or it can be storefronts? Is that what it looks like to you?
I'm
Diane?
not sure if it would be in home. There would be something that would be a separate parcel. I have to dig a little bit more into that. I can bring up the map if you want to take a quick look at it here.
Yeah,
And
it
yeah.
let me
says
do that. Let me bring up
multi-use,
map
like the
just
homes.
see-
Yeah, I read through it and it seemed like, you'd have to have, you could put a single building up and a single outbuilding, but on your building, you could make it mixed use with a storefront, with
Mhm.
so much percent glazing and this and that and the other thing, which is over my head, but the bottom
Yeah.
line is it seemed like it would be part of your home/business and you could make it a storefront. And of which there's like not a single storefront from Bet's place all the way down till the end, right? It just,
Mhm.
why is that being grouped into that whole street being grouped into
Right.
becoming a commercial zone essentially? And what
Okay.
does that
So
mean
let's
for
bring this up.
taxes and things
And
like that?
I think what you're saying is true too. So like much as you see, like where you might have a hair salon on the bottom of a 2-family business, and then it's like owner occupied on the top as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Let me go into the use table here. I think, am I sharing my screen? I think I am. It's coming up
Yes.
here.
yes.
Okay. So what I did was I just went to see view. I clicked on that. Of course, it brought up CD4W. And then now I'm going to just kind of scroll down here and take a look at the uses. And this is what everyone can do. I'm using this as an example now with Peter and Nancy, but you can do this for any of the questions that you have in your zone. And then what did they call it? The
Like civic use,
Mixed
mixed
use.
use, and residential.
okay.
And it has the standard like sizes, like so much,
Mhm.
for each if you got a multifamily, it's like 1,650 feet, whatever
Okay.
square feet for each, if you're a multifamily, you gotta have twice that and so on. But still, it does, I don't know how it compares since it's written so differently. I'm not sure how it compares to commercial C and commercial D is what the rest of the street is today.
Right,
No, I mean
exactly. And
residential C and D. I'm sorry, residential C and D.
right. And I think it's also a little bit confusing, right, to actually discern what you have today versus what's going in there. I think what I might have to do is refer you back, because I don't actually have the full, the other slide up here that has the full use, I don't think, of CD4. It may be a good question for you to shoot in via email to Steve Kleppen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And get clarification from him on exactly what it means. But I do know that in one of the articles, there's a specific definition for each one of these uses.
Okay.
It does sound, just from what you said, it does kind of sound like exactly what you said, that you would have a residential building that would have, some sort of a retail or another use as an accessory use there.
Yeah,
Right.
and that is that's a dramatic change. It's not a single, like I said, from Betts to 136. There's until you get to the corner, there's not a single storefront.
They're all
Right.
houses.
They're all
Yeah.
houses, I mean, they're multifamily, sure, but
Right.
and
And I
they have
guess the
been forever.
question is whether or not is it any chance that it's allowable today and just no one has done it? But even then, even if the word, it's something that you might want to consider asking them to take out, because I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be.
Right.
Did
Yeah.
you look at the old one?
I tried to read the old ones, but like you say, this is much better organized now. The old ones is a lot of tech, text heavy.
Yeah.
So I'll try to figure it out, but
Yeah.
it
And what-
doesn't
and what-
seem like, it's a residential scene. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Plus the taxes, how will it affect us in taxes if it is a change?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. Oh, and one of the other things too, I'm going to email this out. I did have Steve Kleppen do a chart for us of the existing zones and what's allowed as of right, and then allowed by special permit. And I had a little bit of trouble just kind of aligning all of that in the way that it was done in an Excel spreadsheet. So I am going to, and actually, let me see if I can open it now quick. I will do that. And if not, I will get this emailed out to folks, because that's going to answer some of the, it'll be an easier way to answer some of the questions of what's allowed now and what's going to be allowed in the new zone.
Great, thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, Diane, this is Mark Lloyd. A quick question for you, ma'am, if I can. First of all, thank you very much for all you do. It's beyond, over and beyond for what you do to East Norwalk, and not only that, but for Norwalk. Quick question for you. When you have the map out and you expand it, and you get to East Norwalk, there's some blue dotted lines that go throughout the city. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. I'm just wondering
I've
if you have any idea
noticed
what
that.
they may be.
You just reminded me actually that I need to get an answer on those blue dots because I'm not sure what they mean.
Okay,
I
thank
thought
you.
at one point it was the coastal area management designation, but that didn't actually seem to align everywhere. And I also, thank you for that. I will definitely get an answer for that and I'll post it. And then I also noticed where there seems to be a very heavy designation on commercial driveways that almost end up looking like they're streets on these maps.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else noticed that kind of weird thing. But I'm also going to get an answer on that because I don't know if that means that they're intending to convert driveways into, into streets for some reason within the corridor. It's kind of weird.
Because when you look at those blue dots, they segment certain areas. And one I was looking at was Ludlow Manor. I don't live there, used to live there, but there's a blue
Right.
dot going right all the way across that. So I don't know how that segments or how that handles that.
Right. Okay. Yep. I will get an answer on that too. And by the way, folks, again, I want you to, if you can, to take a look at all the zones, even if they don't seem related, especially the industrial and marine commercial. I'm noticing things like where they're designating marine commercial, I don't think had been designated that in the past. And I saw at least a use of like hotels would be allowable there. And I never had heard that before. So that kind of took me by surprise. So I think that's why we all need to have multiple eyes on this to take a look at, what's being designated. For example, up here at Platt Street and Pleasant and Charles, we know that there's marine commercial there, but I'm not sure, if this is something where we would want to have somebody building a hotel on the water coming through into the neighborhood, or maybe we do. I don't know, but it's another example of why you really want to check everything out. Okay. I also just want to advise too, when you're writing in with a concern, is that you be as detailed as possible on, why you're concerned with it. And also if you're writing in with something that you see isn't allowed now, but that you would like it to be allowed in our community, that you state the reasons why it would be beneficial, so that the more information you can give them, the better. I understand that we, to a certain extent, or to an entire extent, Steve Kleppen has dug in his heels on maintaining this corridor for high density. And, you already know that he said, like, even if thousands of us show up to say we don't want it, that he's still going to keep it in here because he believes it's the right thing to do for the city. So it is kind of an uphill battle for some of the things in here that we want changed, but I don't think that means that we don't, still show up and stand up and speak up, as we like to say. Oh, I didn't want to end it on a Debbie Downer. Okay, is
No,
anybody
I'm going to
else,
end on an up note. We've got a lot of people who joined tonight, and I think that shows a lot of people who want to participate.
Great.
It sounds to me, if I was going to sort of respond to everybody who's, wants to dig in and look further and wants to write in, highly encourage that, and really encourage Wednesday people showing up at City Hall, or if you need to get into the Zoom meeting through City Hall, I would advise looking on City Hall well in advance. I have trouble personally finding their meetings and their Zoom links and stuff. So if you're going to do it that way Wednesday, just you might
Yeah.
give yourself an extra few minutes. I personally
You know-
believe, in person helps a lot. So I hope everybody
Yeah.
will.
I think in person definitely helps a lot. And
It's a
and there'll be,
statement.
there'll be people there from all over the city. This is not an East Norwalk thing, and there'll be people there that are, there are going to be things in East Norwalk that we've taken the position that we really want to get changed, and other people will be there from East Norwalk that really want to keep it. And so let's be respectful of everyone's opinion when we're dealing with this stuff. And Sarah, your point is well taken. I do get that complaint all the time about the city links. I will, when we get off this meeting, I will send the link, the Zoom link for the Wednesday meeting. So people don't have to go and hunt and check for that. Okay.
That's nice of you. Thanks.
Okay. And I understand they're actually having a brief meeting beforehand, 5:30 to 6 o'clock, because they have a couple of zoning items that they have to take up, I guess, because of the time clock they're up against. But I would hope that they'll be through by 6 o'clock, because people will already be waiting for this thing to start. And if you do work until 6, like I do, or you commute, or you get home late, or, feel free to jump in at any time. And of course, these public hearings will be posted. The videos will be posted shortly thereafter on the city's YouTube channel, and we'll also post them on the ENNA YouTube channel as well. So if you couldn't make it, you can grab a bag of popcorn and for your, movie.
I'm
for your,
I'm
for your
going to
watching.
toss in one more thing here, Diane, which is that
Yep.
for people, if we are allowed to, or correct me if I'm wrong, we would have an opportunity to speak on Wednesday
Mhm.
if you either sign up or if you wait for the end or whatever. But as I
Mhm.
understand from the last meeting I saw, they're going to be pretty firm about the timing on that. I think they give us 3 minutes or something.
Yeah,
Might
they
be
were.
worth writing your notes in advance so that you don't accidentally find yourself wandering.
Yeah. Good. Another good point. Thanks, Sarah. They were actually debating that, I think, at their last meeting, how they were going to handle it, because they expect a large turnout. Normally, they don't put a time limit on people speaking for zoning issues and applications. But in this case, there could be a large crowd, and they want to end, hopefully by 11. And so they may be limiting to 3 minutes. They'll also ask you not to necessarily repeat what everyone else in front of you has said. But we do feel that it's important that everyone have an opportunity to get on the record. So you can basically ignore that, and you can say things that even if someone else has said it, even to say, I agree with other speakers on this particular point. So, and then the other thing that I don't think was finalized, and we'll find out, is if they will allow you to speak at the second hearing if you spoke at the first one. And we'll have an answer on that before the following hearing.
And we have one raised hand from,
Mhm.
it looks to be Nicole's Edie. I don't know what that is.
Yep.
Yes.
Nicole. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, Miss Diane, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. No, thank you. Thank you for everything. But I just wanted to let you know there is going to be an ad hoc affordable committee meeting at the same time.
Same time.
So I'm gonna be tuned into that. I have to do 2 devices. This is gonna be insane. So I just wanted you to know I'm still gonna be a part of the P&Z meeting,
Okay.
but I gotta be on the affordable one first.
Thanks, Nicole. I appreciate that. And thank you. And, for people that don't know Nicole, she is a champion of looking to do real affordable housing. None of which any of this stuff that we've seen so far and about to see addresses with luxury market rate housing. And Nicole, thanks for all the work you're doing on that. And so sorry that these things, I don't think deliberately, but just by the schedule, they always conflict. And I would like to be on both as well. So thanks for cloning yourself.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other last minute questions on the map itself? Anybody want me to hone in on something? Nancy and Peter too, if you want to email me offline, I'll take a closer look and then I can email you back. And
Thank
then
you.
I'm going to keep my next Monday night open, as I said, for everyone. Okay, Sarah?
I see no other hands.
I'll take a
I see
motion
no
to
other hands,
adjourn.
no other chats.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, So we will close out this meeting. Thank you for everybody who came on. And again, let's work through this together, and email into me if you need anything, and email into the city if you have specific questions, and keep following along. And I'll be there in person. I hope to see a lot of people at City Hall next week, and come up and introduce yourself if you can, and say hello as well. Thanks, everybody.